Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Walking Through the Book of Proverbs. Today we are going to begin in chapter 11 and we're actually going to start in verse 1. But let me tell you about our topic. We are going to talk about judgment. Dun dun dun. We're not actually going to talk about judgment in the sense of the word of like hellfire and brimstone, but rather we're going to talk about the meaning of the word as in the ability to make a considered and carefully thought out decision and to come to a sensible conclusion. Like a judgment as in like a decision that's rendered by a court, for example, after a thorough examination of all of the evidence, and then make a decision and evaluate all of that evidence. So one of the primary images that is associated with the word judgment is the picture of a scale. Balance, like a scale. So this is the image that we find in the verse that we're going to begin with, chapter 11, verse 1. It says, "A false balance," meaning a scale, "is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight." So the word translated here as just is a Hebrew word, and I believe it's pronounced shalom. It sounds very similar to the word shalom, and it means in complete, safe, at peace. And then it's also translated, this exact same word is translated the following ways in other places in Scripture as full, uncut, whole, for example. And if you want the Strong's Concordance number, it is 8003. So, I believe we can say that if it's complete and entire and uncut, that all of the evidence is there. All right. So that is the biblical Hebrew meaning behind the word here that is translated as just, a just weight. So let's look at the meaning of the word the way we understand it in English, for example. Just to compare the two, I'm going to read a section of an article here that explains very briefly the etymology of our English word. Okay, justice, it's titled Justice and Dike in ancient Greek. It looks like the word, like that's not the way you pronounce it. It's spelt like the word dike, but not pronounced that way. Translations, and this is the article speaking here, of ancient Greek resources, especially those by Plato, usually translate this word as justice or dike. It is important to note that when reading Plato or other ancient Greek sources, that the modern English word justice has a full history of meanings and connotations that did not exist in ancient Greece. Instead, the ancient Greek word dike means something like behaving in accordance with nature or how your group normally behaves. It speaks of the way things normally are. I'm going to fast forward here just a little bit. The Greek goddess Dike was the goddess of justice and was equated with the Roman goddess Justitia, or justice, and kind of had obviously a lot of religious overtones there. So the translation of Dike as justice in the modern sense does not fit well with Plato's text, and scholars believe that he did not mean to describe justice in its that Plato did mean to describe justice in its original sense. And so when he uses that word, he simply means acting out the way one would normally in your group in that situation. So the confusion between ancient Greek word and the translation as justice in English has led to significant confusion and difference of interpretation among scholars and students reading Plato's Republic and other words that use the term. All right, so what does that mean for us today? I promise you I have somewhere I'm going with this. So here's the chain of custody, to use a legal term. We have Psyche, the Greek goddess, or the equivalent of the Roman or Latin goddess Justice. And this is where we get the English word from. Though the meaning of the word, as we see here, has shifted somewhat. And we see an example of this even in the scriptures found in the book of Acts, actually in chapter 28, verses 3 through 6. Let me read this to you. And when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, there came a viper out of the heat and fastened on his hand. And when the barbarians, or the people of the island, saw the venomous beast hanging on his hand, they said among themselves, "No doubt this man is a murderer, whom, though he had escaped the sea, yet justice," capital J here, speaking of the goddess, not of the principle, the way we would understand it, speaking of a pagan goddess, "yet justice," or vengeance, "suffereth not to live. But Paul, he shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. Howbeit, when they looked, when he should have swollen or fallen down dead suddenly, but after that they had looked a great while and saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god." There's so many funny ways that you can talk about that. It's humorous if it wasn't actually kind of sad for them. But Justice is most often depicted as a woman blindfolded, holding a balance with a sword in the other hand. And we see that the Greek mindset of justice is heavily influenced by how your group would behave, by the culture around you, and if you step out of line with what is the accepted mode of behavior, then there is a unsheathed sword standing ready. Okay, this is the way we've always done things, type of a thing. And her blindfold, of course, is supposed to infer impartiality. All right, so let's compare that to the biblical understanding of the word. Remember, it sounds very much like shalom. Those two words, that Hebrew word to this Latin-based word, justice, do they mean the same thing? Does the biblical definition of a just weight and balance equal that of the word justice in the sense of the word that we've just been learning about? So, is biblical judgment a scale that is speaking of here in Proverbs 1? Is it supposed to be driven and the sides of it tipped one way or the other based upon your group, the behavior of those around you, the normal group behavior? And does blindness infer impartiality? Let's see what the scriptures say about that. Leviticus 19:15. You shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. Neither extreme. But in righteousness shalt thou judge your neighbor. Key word there, in righteousness you make a judgment. John 7:24 says, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. There's that word again. Exodus 23:2, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many. In other words, everybody else was jumping off of a cliff type of a thing, to wrest judgment, and you shall not countenance a poor man in his cause. In other words, either way, either extreme, You're supposed to have righteous judgment. All right, Exodus 23:6. Thou shalt not rest the judgment of the poor in his cause. And then in Deuteronomy 1:17 it says, you shall not respect persons in judgment, but you shall hear the small as well as the great. You shall not be afraid of the face of men, for the judgment is God's. Colossians 3:25 says, but he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong that he has done. There is no respect of persons. Ephesians 6:8, knowing that whatsoever good thing a man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be a slave or free. Deuteronomy 16:19, thou shalt not rest judgment, thou shalt not respect persons, show favoritism, neither take a gift, for a gift blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts the words of the righteous. Deuteronomy 10:17, for the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, a great God, a mighty and a terrible, which regardeth not persons, nor taketh rewards, because it just said a reward is what blinds the eyes, and it's inherent if you're blinded. That's not necessarily a good thing. It is shaping up to look that way. Psalm 119:18, open thou mine eyes, meaning to uncover or unveil them, that I may behold wondrous things out of your law. That's where we learn what is righteous. So, from cover to cover, from Genesis to Revelation, the answer appears to be the same. That having a just or shalem balance, a complete, an uncut, a whole, entire, where all of the evidence is weighed type of balance. Where that is found, where a judgment and decision is rendered upon that, it is not based upon consensus. Now, sometimes consensus matches the judgment that may be rendered, but it may not. But rather, it's not based on consensus, but rather upon righteousness. Now, in my opinion, this is just me speaking. I think righteousness is far over spiritualized in the believing community in general. In our day-to-day walk, it is made to sound so spiritual, which it is. But in essence, all it really is what is right in God's eyes. It's not whether you're male, female, rich, poor, black, white, whatever. It's what is right or wrong in God's eyes is what is righteous. So I heard a rabbi speak one time. I haven't checked this out, but I heard him say that Hebrew children have to stop speaking Hebrew to complain when they say that something isn't fair, that there isn't a direct equivalent to fairness. And but there are concepts of wholeness and righteousness, of course. And what is righteous is what is considered right. So a false balance or a scale is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. And remember last episode we talked about how having thankfulness and gratitude made the Father's heart happy. And it says here to have righteous judgment, doing what is right in his eyes, makes him happy. So most of us are never going to wear a black robe and be a judge and do things like that. But yet everyone makes judgments every single day. How you treat your friends, if you mediate between people, job interactions, political issues. It's important to have a just weight and balance on the scales of your life, to where you see the facts. You allow yourself to learn all of the evidence, to explore what the facts are before you make a judgment, and not let that be based upon the consensus of what your group thinks. Because it's what is righteous is what is right. So Psalm 37:30 says, "The mouth of the righteous speaks wisdom, and his tongue talks of judgment." All that is what is right and wrong in God's eyes. Lord, help us to apply this to our lives, even right now. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye.